Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. So with that, can we do roll call? And Mary Hefty's missing, but we think she's coming, so we'll get her included once she gets here.
Councilmember Walter,
Present.
Councilmember Haskell.
Here.
Councilmember Flynn,
Here.
Mayor Taylor.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, so we have no presentations this evening. So then the next item up is the town manager report. Darcy? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
I've got orders to move along.
Yeah, in
Be
my
efficient
defense,
tonight. Helen holding me to task.
asking Vice Mayor Hufty where she is. Okay, hold on. I have a beautiful PowerPoint because there's a lot of exciting things happening in town,
Excellent.
starting with the music series, which will be Thursday night. Hold on, I have a great graphic that shows you who's playing. It's a fancy guitarist. Steel guitar, I think. Hold on.
Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay. Darcy Smith, town manager. Yes. So excitement. Summer concert series start this week on Thursday with Dennis Johnson. And we'll have 2 more nights. And then many of you know, we also have the PV Palooza on August 29th. The lineup has been announced and town members were sent a lovely postcard with details. More excitingly, we had the Town Emergency Preparedness and Safety Day, which was well attended. Here's some photos. And Vice Mayor Hufty and I attended, as well as Councilmember Flynn. And we successfully made ham radio contact. I talked to someone as far away as Nebraska, or maybe it was South Dakota. Yeah. So thank you to all who helped, the fire department, EPIC, WPV Ready, WPV CERT, and the Town Emergency Preparedness Committee. Next, some of you hopefully received the Portola Valley Post, which is our quarterly printed newsletter, which was delivered to residents this week. And as part of this year's budget process and last year's evaluation of potential fiscal stability measures, we've engaged our residents to identify the town's services, needs, and priorities. And that information is included in the post. And this is an extension of the scientific survey conducted last September. We relaunched this Portola Valley conversation to ensure that we could hear from all residents on these important matters. And again, that information is on our website. So last, our Public Works completed some nice projects around town. They completed the fire district completed some valuable tree removals. And then our staff completed a sinkhole repair, and they replaced, you might have noticed, some very old rotten wheel stops that were crumbling and they were a little bit of a hazard. So we have these beautiful new wheel stops and also nice handicapped parking signs. So thank you to our Public Works team, Justin and Scott, who work really, really hard, and then the Woodside Fire Protection District. So that's all for my report. I hope to see all of you on Thursday night at the town center.
Thank you, Darcy. And thank you for showing up at the radio. I mean, I know it's appreciated that you were there. So I think they even get a few extra credit for, a town official showing up. So thank you. I was out of town. All right. With that, we'll move on to oral communications. Is there anyone that would like to speak on issues not on the agenda? So I see no one in the schoolhouse, and I don't see any hands online. And I see Mary. Yay. Hello, Mary.
Oh, that doesn't feel good.
Which, am I saying hello? Well, welcome. And let it be noted that Councilmember Hufty is in the building and seating at the podium. So, all right. So, yeah, no worries. So we just finished up oral communications. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Yeah, Helen said, you need to move this meeting along. So we're moving it along. So, All right, so consent agenda. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? So I see none in the schoolhouse. Is there anybody online that would like to comment on consent agenda? I don't see any hands. All right, so I'll bring it back to the council. Are there any consent items that anybody wants to pull? I'm sorry, say again, 6D?
6D.
Okay. Copy.
I'd like to pull the regular meeting minutes unless they've already been corrected.
Yep, and I would pull the special meeting minutes, 6A.
Okay, so I think I've heard 6A, 6B, and 6D.
Yep.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the lone remaining consent agenda item 6C?
So moved.
Thank you. I have motion is second.
Aye.
Aye. Any hearing none, 6 approved. All right, why don't we start with 6A? Ellen, I think that was yours.
Yep, I just need it, and I did notify the Darcy and Veronica, I was recused on 6A, excuse me, on the item for the special meeting minutes, so I just wanted the record to reflect that. I am recused, even I was stuck in traffic for 5 minutes and then I was recused as well due to my day job. So, thank you.
And Veronica, do you have what you need on that?
Yes, A was already revised and
Okay.
reposted. Yeah.
Okay, so this new revision that's here is, okay, great. All right, if you guys don't mind, why don't we just go through all of them and then we'll just, unless they're substantial, we can just approve all of them at the same time.
Mhm.
All right, so why don't we go with 6B?
So mine's just minor typos. I already let you know that there's 3 indications where the vote is listed as for recusal and then against, and it just needed to be listed as for, against, and then either recusal or absent. So the 3 votes were listed incorrectly.
So Veronica, do you feel like you have
Yes.
the
we got-
correction, you
yes,
know what to
noted.
make?
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. All right, Judith, 6D?
Yeah, I wanted to understand a little bit more of the history of this. It sounds like everybody's in the county signs up to this, but there are some strings attached in the underlying document. So I wanted to understand the context here. What's the benefit? And I think it's that we're eligible to receive grant money. I'm not sure for what. If somebody could give me a high level, non-detailed sense of that.
Yeah, so we'll have Sarah Course, Planning Building Director, answer that question. She's done some great research on this.
Sure, of course, Plan Building Director. So thank you for that question. So this agreement, as you know, this is an amendment to a previous agreement that the town has entered into with the County of San Mateo. So this amendment really, why it's coming forward is there's just a couple updates around HUD's own policies. And one of the policies was around the renewal requirements or how this agreement gets renewed. So really it can only get renewed so often and then you have to come forward for, I guess, a full renewal of the agreement itself instead of the auto renewal. So it's really the auto renewal policy and there are a few other bullets they called out that are kind of the main things for this agreement amendment. And then with us entering into this, there's about 16 other jurisdictions that are less than 50,000 people or have a population of 50,000 or less that have chosen to enter into this agreement with the county. And so my understanding is that funding comes in, I don't have an exact number, but I was on the phone with the county today. I thought it was anywhere between like 4 and 6 million that is coming in that's allocated to different programs and grants that's distributed throughout the county. They mentioned things like Meals on Wheels and some other programs to support housing and things like that. So I do have a list. Unfortunately, that wasn't distributed to town council, but there are a variety of things that this goes towards that can also be of benefit to the town and the surrounding community.
So watered under the bridge on this, to be clear. There are some costs we might incur by complying with a cooperation agreement. we've got to commit to adopt and enforce certain prohibitions on excessive force, which I'm sure we do, but and then you also are restricted from applying for certain grants independently. That kind of makes sense. But then affirmative action requirements. And my issue isn't with these line items, it's with, have we looked at and confirmed that the costs of continuing cooperation are reasonable in light of the revenue that you say we're going to get?
I mean, there wasn't a full analysis done related to cost. It really was just looking at the amendment language.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my only comment would be, I think when this comes up again in the future, we ought to just make sure, since we're in cost monitoring / minimizing mode, that we understand where our costs are here and just confirm a little bit more formally next time where they are. But these amendments don't seem particularly material to me. And they seem to be required. So for me, I'm fine with that explanation, but next time around, I'll want more structure around the analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask just another quick question? If we do get one of these grants, because I was a little bit under the impression that we probably wouldn't qualify for anything, but would we then have to incur these updates to ordinances and what have you? Or is it just in general, we have to have all these things set up already?
So I'm not sure if I can answer that.
I think we're committing to do these things regardless of whether or not we get grants. I don't know if that helps. But that's what I'm questioning. And I don't know that now is the moment to dive into this, but next time around, I'll want a more fulsome understanding of that.
I mean, we have affirmative action in our code. We have,
Maybe beside the point. I agree.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, I'll motion to approve 60.
Okay, so, and I'd like to do, but let me just ask a quick question before we go there.
Yeah.
So Catherine or Darcy, do you have anything more to add? And no is an okay answer. I just wanted to follow up. and give
I'll
you-
just add that we've been under this agreement for a long time. And this is a long-standing agreement, and we haven't, to my knowledge, incurred substantive additional costs.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so with that, if you wouldn't mind, 6A, B, and D, that we just get them all done. So I would accept a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I hear no opposition. All right, so that one, consent agenda is approved. So moving on to regular agenda. Thank you, Sarah. Moving on to the regular agenda, 7A. Tony, I assume you have a staff report for us?
Yes, I do. So tonight we are accepting, having council consider acceptance of the fiscal year 22-23 audited financial statements and other related reports. So The audited results are, we did receive an unmodified or a clean opinion, and that means the financial statements within reasonable assurance reflect the financial condition of the town of Portola Valley for fiscal year 22-23. Just some brief highlights. Total net position decreased by 1.6 million. General fund balance decreased by 1.26 million. And then there was a new finding in the memorandum of internal control. The chart you see is some of the variance or the changes in some of the balances from 21-22 to 22-23. Our financial statements are when you look at the GASB adjustments, we are minimal. We only have we have to do an adjustment for compensated absences, our pension liability, and our OPEB liability. So those are what's being reflected in, excuse me, in this table. This chart, this actually was requested by the Finance Committee. Just an update of all the findings from previous years and the status of where we are. As you can see, as we're getting closer and closer to current fiscal year, we are making those corrections, implementing council or the auditor's recommendations. But like I said, the 22-23, there was a new finding, and it was untimely removal of authorized signers on the bank accounts, primarily due to the amount of staff turnover between 22-23 and 23-24 that we didn't keep up with. But at no time was there a situation where we did not have an authorized signer on staff. So we were not completely out of compliance, but the auditor just thought it was a finding and a comment that this is something that we need to stay on top of with staff separation, especially with authorized signers like town manager or assistant town manager or finance director.
Tony, could you just clarify how to read that table? Because
Sure.
yeses
So-
and nos and reds and greens.
So in 2021, yes means it was a finding. And that's why it's colored red. It's not good. And then the N is it's no longer a finding, and it's green, so which is good. 25-26, we will probably get a finding for timeliness for completion of audit because we will be behind. But as I stated, we are in the process of catching up. We're implementing the changes and recommendations that the auditors have suggested in their memorandum of internal control. Other reports that you were given was the report on the GAN limits, Measure A and Measure W. The auditor reported that we're in compliance. We are compliant with all the requirements for the GAN limit, Measure A, Measure W. Required communications, there were no disagreements between staff and the auditor. The Finance Committee did review the financial statements at its last meeting on June 30th and did recommend that council accept the audited financial statements as presented. And with that clears up my report, and I turn it back to council for questions.
Thank you, Tony. Questions for Tony? Clarifying questions on the audit? Rebecca? No's an okay answer. This is just questions, and then we'll go to public comment and come back. So just checking.
I just had some really minor questions because I had some used about some of the phrasing of some of the stuff. So page 53 of the packet. You probably don't have it right in front of you. Let's see. Page 53 of the packet. So it said the beginning fund balance for the general fund was restated by 368,000 due to accounting entry errors from the prior year that resulted in overstating current liabilities and general government expenses.
Yes.
So when I read that, I read it as if you're overstating your liabilities and your expenses, to me that says that you have more money. But when I look at the tables, it's shown that 368,000 is shown as a negative.
So yes, so when you look at the basic accounting equation, you have assets equals liabilities plus fund balance. The issue was that the 20 or 21-22 financial statements, we did a prior period adjustment. And how I booked it and how the auditor booked it, they increased the liability, but we were actually reducing the liability. So even though the net effect was zero on the right-hand side of the equation, liabilities were overstated, fund balance was understated. So we had to make that correction in the 23-24, or I'm sorry, the 22-23.
Because you had made some kind of correction the year before?
Yes, but if you were looking at liabilities and fund balance, those two together add up to assets. We were still in balance. However, liabilities were over, fund balance was under.
Okay.
But it was still, the net effect was zero, but we had to make the correction because they are two separate components in the same equation.
Okay, I think I kind of understand a little bit. And then there was a bunch of situations where I consider it to be kind of a double negative way of, these are just minor things, but I was confused and might as well get it clarified. Statements that said, find an example. Well, it said something like decreased by minus whatever.
Mhm.
So to me, that's a double negative, but I think the way when I look at the numbers, it just meant, so it decreased by minus 3.1 million, when in fact it's in English for me, it would have been decreased by 3.14 million. You see, but every time there's that little minus stuck in there, which I found very confusing.
This is pretty standard language
Standard
in
language.
financial statements.
Okay, well, I haven't experienced it that way, but maybe government does everything a little weird. And then I noticed that we have a outstanding liability, that we've loaned something or someone money for a minor amount. What was?
So the road maintenance districts,
Oh, okay.
so they pay, it's $13,000 each year for 10 years. It was about 131,000 total.
Okay.
And that was in 21-22, I believe.
And then I kind of got confused with the unassigned fund balance. The number kept changing from one page to the next. And I kind of think it was due to the library 20,000 payable liability there that kind of was sometimes included, sometimes wasn't included when you listed the unassigned fund balance.
Right. So if you're looking at there's the statement of net position, which is all funds plus the GASB adjustments. And then the next section is the fund financial statement. So the statement of net position, the unassigned would include anything related to the GASB adjustments, which are not in the fund financial statement. So those numbers are going to be different.
Okay. And then I always found it odd that on page 65, last year we had a general government, I have notes here that I don't have complete. It was only $660,000.
Mhm.
And then this year, we're dealing with is 6 million and something. So what,
Adjustments related to pension, because we had a significant reduction in the previous year that was showing up in the deferred outflows and deferred inflows. Will those get recognized in this year? So it's a constant back and forth, but it's related to the GASB adjustments.
okay. And we didn't have any SBITA liabilities for that new software as a service thing.
We do have SPIDA receivable or payables with our subscription based, but it was immaterial because we didn't exceed the threshold of $300,000.
Okay. And I assume that will be different for this year when we get to 2020.
No, but it has to be 300,000 per subscription.
Oh,
So, yeah, so
Okay.
that and the previous year was loans. It was the same threshold where each loan had to be over 300,000 for us to recognize it. But we have such a small volume,
okay.
we won't be recognizing it.
And then I just happened to notice that our audit for 2022, the report was dated August 11th, 2025. And then this audit for 2023, it said, they made a comment, the audit auditor made a comment about the documents not being provided until mid-May 2026. So do you have some sort of explanation for what happened and why it
Well,
took so
well,
long?
part of it was
gather the
the
data?
$300,000 variance. And it was in May where we finally came to a resolution.
Okay. So they kind of a little misstated that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Okay. So we hopefully won't encounter that. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Judith, do you have any questions?
If you just go back to the chart that the finance committee asked for. Out of the thing, I mean, the bottom line is out of the things that are remaining to be worked on, are those, do you anticipate any significant impediments in correcting those in the remaining audits or going forward from here on? Yeah, it's the third slide there.
Anticipate any impediments in resolving these issues.
So we've got all the processes and the people that we need to
Right.
ensure.
Staff is, each year staff's getting more and more knowledgeable. So they're catching it as they're entering it as you know, as it is, as it's going in. So what's actually being entered into the system the first time is clean or what hadn't done in the prior years.
Okay, and the one that is a blank, we're just gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah.
About that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary? Thank you. Ellen?
Hi, so first, thank you. This is, this town has been waiting for this for a long time. I know this is not comments, so couple quick questions. I didn't have as much time as I normally do, so just bear with me. Total revenues increased from 0.66 million to 9.3 million. That was just sales of houses, right? Differences, but
Well, it's all funds, not just general funds. So we did have some significant with Measure A, Measure W. We also had investment earnings. We had positive investment earnings where in the previous year we had losses.
great. And the total expenses, to go from 6.1 million to 10.9, that was the year, remind me, that was the year.
That was the GASB adjustments that I alluded to with Councilmember Flynn.
Okay. Just making sure. Hang on, let me go. I was just a little bit confused on segregation of duties. Found that the deficiencies had not been mitigated as of June 23. Therefore, they are deemed to be the current year's significant deficiencies. Is that current year being 23?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a finding from the prior year. So all the memorandum, all those findings is for fiscal year 22-23.
Right.
But
Okay.
segregation of duties at the time, there was only 2 members of the finance staff. So you can't have segregation of duties with 2. So now we have 3 and actually 4. So we have alleviated or mitigated that finding.
Great. Thanks. Okay. And in terms of the timely deposit of checks, that was a problem. There were stories of checks getting lost. And is there now a more clear process for tracking and deposits? And
Every check that's received is logged, scanned, deposited within 7 to 10 days.
excellent. Thanks. Okay. Um, I think that might be it. Great. Let me just double check. Yep, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, let me open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? See no one in the schoolhouse. Is there anyone online that would like to comment on the audit? See Rita's hand. Rita, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. As we applaud the 22-23 audit moving forward, we still have to acknowledge that today is July 8th, 2026, and we have a ways to go. I just hope that with all the moving parts that we have, that before we put something on the ballot, that the rest of them are caught up, so that the town residents can have a clearer picture of what our finances are. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Rita. Are there any other public comments? All right, I don't see any other hands up online, so I will close this item's public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. Any further discussion?
Say something. I just wanted to thank you for incredibly hard work that's gone into this. I know cleaning up accounts that you had nothing to do with and having to try and find missing information, lost checks and all that stuff, put in place all sorts of new processes was a huge amount of work. And you definitely have my gratitude. Thank you.
Yeah, I have this similar statement. You and your whole staff and, the auditors working on this have not had a simple task. So while it looks nice and tidy and short here, I know that's not a reflection of the complexity that you've been dealing with. In terms of not a granular level of detail, but an overarching setting of expectation on the future audits, my general sense has been this is a super tough one, but once this is kind of put in line, the others should be a fraction of some nature of the future ones. So if you could just comment directionally on how to think about that, that would help me.
Yeah, this one was getting over the hump.
Yeah.
23-24 is cresting 24-25, 25-26 there should not be any issues in regards to providing information. And they should be done relatively, I don't want to say short manner, but it'll be quicker than the previous audits.
And I guess since this is discussion, the only request I have is as you work through with the auditors, obviously the public comment regarding the ballot measure is something that's on all of our minds. And I'm not asking tonight for granular detail, but this is a request for updates from over the next several months on where we are and what's realistic and expected. So you don't have to answer that now. There's not something to go after there, but
We will have an update at the next council meeting.
great. Thank you.
I just wanted to share the enthusiasm for the work you're doing, and I really appreciate it. Glad to see that we're getting onto the slope and heading down the slope to get to the finish line. So
Thank you.
good luck.
Yeah. Can you remind me what month and year you started?
May 2024.
Yeah. So here you are having to reconstruct what other people left, and you've done a great job. I know it's taken time,
Right.
but good things take time, and you did a really, so kudos. Joining my colleagues, and thank you for what you're doing. It is appreciated.
Thank you.
And ditto, thank you, Tony. Yeoman's work that you're doing, and we really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the update at the next meeting. All right, with that, I'm going to close 7A and move to 7B. which is Tony again.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. If we need,
I make a motion to accept the
yeah,
audited financial statements.
thank you
I'll
very much.
second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear no opposition. All right, now, thank you. We'll move on to 7B.
Okay, Tony gets a little break first. This was really a team effort, but I want to emphasize a budget conscious team effort. So you're looking at the team. We have only one other person who's not here, Lauren Tarpey, who's assisted us. But I want to emphasize, because I think there was a public question about, has this been expensive? Will it be expensive in the future? And I just want to emphasize we have done a lot of work on this to minimize the cost. We don't have some expensive consultant working for us. It's rolling up our sleeves and doing the work. And when I look to the future, would this incur more cost for the town? I don't see any. If we became a charter town. So we're here to talk about, the review of the draft ordinance presented potentially to the voters. That decision is not tonight. So this is essentially just a study session. No decisions are made. And we have been working on this item for a long time. It's tied into the audits, but the council's top priority this year and last year is working on our financial responsibility and long-term viability. So we've been doing a lot on that. We've been doing education. We're leaving this backlog of audits. As you heard, financial consultant best practices. We got the user fee study and adopted the master fee schedule done and is being implemented. So great work on that. And we're here tonight to talk about a very key part of this fiscal responsibility plan, which is the development of a town charter and real property transfer tax ordinance, which would be placed on the November ballot should the council make that decision at a future meeting. So you've all seen this many times. It's the infamous black line. We already know we have a structural deficit because the council approved this fiscal year budget with one, and things are just looking grim. So that's essentially what we're trying to solve for. As I mentioned in my town manager report, we have had the Portola Valley conversation starting last year with a scientific survey and more recently with community surveys, and they've identified priorities. I don't think this is anything new to the community that we prioritize wildfire prevention, emergency. We want to preserve our town autonomy and we want to focus on infrastructure. And Tony will present a little bit about that. There's a lot of infrastructure needs in this town that have been neglected. So back in April, council directed this team to prepare the charter and you reviewed that in May and June. So we've completed the public hearings on those. So thank you very much. I just want to revisit it because it does tie into this ordinance that you're reviewing tonight. And the charter will lay the groundwork for this revised ordinance by converting the town from a general law to a charter town. It's really important because without that, the town cannot enact this real property transfer tax ordinance. Really important to note this source of revenue goes entirely to the town. And so we've finished the work on the charter, and just important to note, then this charter will allow the town to adopt this real property transfer tax beyond the state approved minimum. So right now there is an existing tax. We receive 55 cents per thousand. And we have been collecting that since, we think, 1967. Yeah. So our current ordinance is that old. And so if you look at the red line of the ordinance that was attached to your staff report, it amends our existing chapter 3.12 to eliminate in our current existing documentary transfer tax. And we would replace it with a new real property transfer tax. The amount is not in the ordinance at this time because we're not here to talk about the amount tonight. I just want you to review. We're looking for you to review the ordinance. We'll be talking about the rate later. But I want to talk a little bit about exemptions because we got a public comment on, and there's been some questions that this ordinance approach that we've presented is simple, and we don't recommend any changes to the current exemptions in the ordinance, which are consistent with state law. They are complicated exemptions, and I guess I want to pause. These are very different than exemptions that you might have heard about related to like Prop 13. So, like when properties transferred from parents to children, or you move out of the county. These are specific exemptions and they're nothing new. Again, we've been applying them since 1967. The one that is most commonly used is if there's a community property division on a dissolution of a marriage or legal separation. A lot of these other ones are very rare, and we either never use them or would very rarely use them. Like, for example, if the town were to acquire property, we would not pay the transfer tax. Same with other governmental agencies. So I just want to pause because we have had an interest in these exemptions, and I think they're easily confused with like, a senior exemption for a parcel tax measure or a Prop 13 exemption. These are very different and they're in state law. And staff's recommendation right now is to keep these simple, base them on state law, because we can always come back and amend later. The amendments to these exemptions are under council control, so it would not need to go to the voters. But throughout this whole process, I've talked about keeping it simple, keeping it streamlined, and that ties in with minimizing our upfront costs. So I mentioned that we're not here to talk about the rate, but I just want you to be aware that that will be presented at the next meeting on July 22nd. But I just want to pause so that we don't get distracted by the rate to just mention an important piece, which is that the council in this ordinance, there is language that allows the council to reduce or repeal the rate without voter approval. We have that currently for the UUT. I believe it has been exercised. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that, because that is language here that you'll be reviewing tonight and giving us feedback on. So we're marching towards the November ballot. So tonight's our meeting to have your preliminary review of this ordinance. And then at the next meeting, we will give you a resolution to consider to place this on the ballot, with the election being November 3rd. And why are we doing this now? We are up against a filing deadline of August 7th. Important to note that this ordinance and the charter would take effect if approved by the voters. There's a little bit of a distinction I just want to mention with the effective date. It would take effect 10 days after the council certifies the election results. If in fact it's passed, the charter takes effect when the town files it with the Secretary of State, and we should get the election results on December 3rd. So, and now we have a presentation by Tony.
So I will be providing some additional context for your discussion. This could be more related to what are some of our long-term needs in relation to council priorities. Not looking for any direction or decision tonight. This is just adding some additional context for your discussion tonight. So here's the council priorities. Financial responsibility, long-term viability. These are what the budget was developed with in mind. We've identified these priorities. They've been our priorities for the past couple fiscal years. We've added community for 26, 27. We've said these are our priorities, but what are the strategies that are going to be implemented with these priorities in mind? When you say financial responsibility, long-term viability, what exactly is that? So for the town, historically, the town has not had a long-term financial spending plan. We haven't prioritized, we haven't identified what's going to be coming down the road. And also we haven't prepared for a rainy day. If there's any type of economic uncertainty, or if there's any type of natural disaster or emergency. Just with that in mind, this winter we're anticipating an El Nino. But other policy questions that council will have to discuss is, the reserve level is currently at 20%. It was reduced from 60%. So the question will be, is the reserve at 20% acceptable? Is it, or do we want to increase reserves? If we want to increase reserves, then we're going to have to build in surpluses in future budgets. Also, there's been discussion at Finance Committee as well about pension funding, whether we want to make additional contributions to lower our pension liability. And these are, like I said, we're just identifying these. We don't have a dollar amount associated with them, but these are things that we further developed if council does give that direction. And looking at safety, obviously our sheriff contract, that's going to increase every year. But every 3 to 4 years, there's going to be a spike with labor when they go through labor agreement or negotiations. Wildfire resilience and evacuation planning and implementation of the evacuation plan. We do have an evacuation plan, but we do not have the funds to implement that plan. Wildfire resilience, we do have Woodside Fire, vegetation management. It has been 80 days per year. However, last year we reduced that to 60 days and we're keeping it at 60 days this year. But, we would like to have some additional funding to increase those days because having the town resilient to wildfire is very important. Also, emergency backup power and cooling centers. Our power issues with the town have been at the forefront the past few months. With the theft of copper wires, but we've also had just power outages. And when a power outage does hit the schoolhouse, and if the schoolhouse is down for a significant amount of time, we lose the functionality of the equipment that's here. Also, we do have a backup generator, but it's one, so we probably should consider some type of redundant backup system. Operational efficiency and effectiveness. Our IT infrastructure is aging, and that's well documented. We have aging equipment. We are in the process of selecting a new IT service provider. But again, significant investment is going to be needed in our IT infrastructure. And that also includes our GIS systems. Also increasing our customer service, training our employees, retaining our employees is essential for the town to be operationally efficient and effective. And when we review some of these CIP projects that we need to consider funding, we need to have some grant writing capability, which we currently do not have on staff at the moment. Looking at community, looking at the town center facilities, including Ford Field, the town courts. We do have some CIP projects impacting those areas that, quite frankly, we might not have the funding for, but we do have some grants available. We have talked significantly about storm drain master plan. The last one was done in 1970, 3 months after I was born. And with the storm drain master plan is going to identify some repairs, and those repairs are going to be in the millions of dollars. And because we have a good idea of the external parts of the storm drain because we can visibly see those, but the internal part of the storm drain system, the corrugated metal or the corrugated steel, the PVC, we don't know the condition. We don't know if there's any significant corrosion. But I mean, the master plan needs to be done. And also we talked about, modernization for greater resilience for power outages, extreme heat and everything. And then on the sustainability side, developing a climate action plan, implementing that plan, those are going to cost funds as well. So looking at the capital improvement program, again, with the evacuation plan, one of those was widening of Alpine Road. That is going to be north of $1 million right there. We have streets and roads, maintenance of effort. We are required the general fund needs to contribute at least $350,000 per year into our streets and roads. And that's where we have our street resurfacing program, our pavement management program. We have not been maintaining that effort in the last 2 fiscal years. And we are subject of possibly having our SB1 funding withheld. And that's about $125,000. And that's for transportation and for other road improvement projects. Again, the Ford Field bathroom and concession stand. Those costs are going to exceed what the grant amount is that we have. And then also the town courts and just the other items that we've identified that the council will need to consider moving forward should if the revenue measure does pass. But if it does pass, then these are conversations that we're going to need to have, not just with the council, but with the community as well. Just what services are they going to expect from the town? So these are some of the strategic investment priorities, and we'll keep this chart up as we go through your discussion. That concludes my report, and give it back to council.
Okay, so there's kind of two parts to this. There's sort of our needs and sort of potential revenue from RPTT, and then there's the actual ordinance itself. Given it's going to be very clumsy to switch back and forth between the two presentations, why don't I suggest that we start with Tony's because it's up. We ask any questions. I'll open it to public comment, and then we can come back and discuss this and move to the ordinance, sort of do the same thing. I think that'll just keep it the most streamlined. So with that, on Tony's presentation, are there clarifying questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So thanks for that. My understanding of the intent behind this is to remind us of what's at stake if we don't enhance the revenues and get to a place where we're more fiscally viable. So is it correct that these are really examples taken both from the public input, but also our prior discussions on we can't do that, we can't do that. It would be great to do that. We need to do that. But it's not like A through Z listing of everything.
No,
Is my interpretation, right?
But it's items that need to be considered moving forward, and the alternative being without the revenue measure, I'm going to be the finance director or the assistant town manager bringing a budget that's going to be draconian.
Yeah, yeah. And these are things at stake.
Right.
If we don't somehow get to a better financial position.
Right. Specifically with the evacuation plan, we have no funding for that.
And that's not to say that we won't also seek grants for some of these things. We have degrees of freedom is my interpretation. If we have more revenue to spend or to seek grants or have a different playbook.
Right. And with grants, there's still the matching component that will be coming out of the general.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I could just, so the other thing I think I heard from Judith was the sort of a couple of slides before this that you showed. Those are just some examples. Like that wasn't an exhaustive list, right? That was just a partial list.
Including but not limited to.
Yeah, fine, perfect. Okay, yeah, that's what I understood.
thought.
Yeah, great.
But I just want to, because it's an important discussion and, there's going to be a lot of work going forward is my sense to refine these, to pick and choose, but that's not today's task. Today is to say.
It's just giving you context.
Okay.
Because you're going to be discussing the ordinance. The next conversation is the rate, and it's based on what do we need.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions for Tony. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, do you have questions?
I guess just from a legal standpoint, when this list of things, for example, falls into sort of the general expenses, right? General operating expenses.
The general fund.
General fund expenses, right? Okay. I think that's it. That's seemed very clear. All the extreme needs. Thanks.
Mary, question?
My question is a higher level. As you move into this next phase, are you feeling like you've gotten to the bottom of the barrel of the problems? Or do you feel like there's another layer is there another infrastructure issue that we're looking at? Or is there do you have a sense that you've actually accomplished it? You've dug all the way in?
Yeah, I believe storm drain is the highest priority, our infrastructure. We do have funding for our streets. Those are our two largest infrastructure and trails. In regards to volume, the miles of roads and the miles of storm drains, and that, we have two people in Public Works that kind of keep an eye on these things for us.
Mhm.
But the only other areas would be just our facilities itself. The buildings that we're in are over 20 years old, except, it's older than that, but, we've been deferring maintenance on our facilities as well. That if we start looking more and more into it, that, yeah, we might have to look at, but for me, the biggest concern is the storm drain.
And that's the most recent too. The HVAC, et cetera, were all old.
Right.
Okay, the one thing that has never shown up on this is the idea of undergrounding the wires as a capital improvement.
That's,
That would be the absolute looking down the barrel of the gun.
yeah, but we're nowhere near having
Okay,
that conversation.
thank you. Those are my questions.
And I think, again, these are examples, but I think the reason is undergrounding is prohibitively expensive. It's like $2 million a mile.
Like 5 million a mile.
And is it now, okay, I keep, I remember the days it used to be $1 million a mile. So if you probably have better data than I do, but the point is, you can imagine that, everything else we've talked about here would be dwarfed if we decided
Right.
underground.
I just wanted to know whether he had a sense that
Yeah.
he was getting to the bottom of the cleanup.
Can't get more bottom than the storm drain.
Oh, yeah, there's the septic. There's the septic. There's sewer and septic.
Ellen, yeah.
Yeah. So, question, obviously, if we were to vote and put this on, if we were to vote against it, we would still have, for instance, the ongoing cost plus our pension liability.
Correct.
And could you speak to the liability issue that we're facing in town?
Our liability is about 2 million, and that's the difference between our total liability and our market value of assets. The market value of assets fluctuates from year to year, investment returns, contribution rates, and all that other stuff. When it's a good investment return year, it shrinks, but it also expands, and when they don't meet the goal, it's not going to go away. We're contractually obligated, but regardless of if it passes or not, we're still going to have to pay it.
And is that 2 million
And that's also including
annual,
the UAL as well.
and that's annually? No, what is that?
No, so
That's
what PERS does is they take the pension liability and amortize it over a rolling 20-year cycle. And so we actually pay an additional, I think it's going to be 190,000 this year on top of what we contribute through payroll deductions in the budget.
So for instance, if we were to go bankrupt and the county were to take us over, they would need to find $2 million somehow to long-term from our assets.
That is a legal conversation. There's been court cases. There's no example of that happening. So I can't really answer that question, but it would be a legal kerfuffle.
Hypothetical.
I want to unwrap that.
Okay.
I believe that is a term legally.
Okay. So, but we have obligation, contractual obligation. So, okay, great. Thank you. That's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Tony, this last slide that you put up, could you speak to this a little bit? So is this your recommendation or staff's recommendation on various ranges? And
Yes.
are you asking council to sort of weigh in and sort of discuss some of these different? Because I mean, obviously the sheriff's contract is, we know what that is. It's 1.4 million and it's roughly an additional $200,000 to $250,000 a year.
Correct.
We know that until we get to a next, like you say, the next contract with the deputies. But like the CIP fund, are you looking for us to weigh in on sort of, do we go leaner or richer? And the same thing with ongoing expenses. Do we go leaner or richer? Is that part of this discussion?
Yes, but I mean, it's more of a range.
Okay.
But with the sheriff services, I mean, that 1.4 is basically to recover the cost increases over the last 3 to 4 fiscal years. CIP fund, my recommendation would be 750,000 per year. But again, that's council has to give that direction. And that's 750, but minus 350 for roads, so that leaves 400 for the CIP projects. But there could be some years where we invest more, could be years where we actually just do the 350. Other ongoing expenses, I mean, that's going to fluctuate. Because there's personnel costs built into that, increases with our medical. But there could be one-time costs increases. Got to do another element update, or there's some other significant unfunded mandate that we have to take care of. But this was just to kind of give you a range of between 2.3 and 3 million of the revenue needs that we're going to need just for ongoing operations and capital improvements.
Okay, so the goal of tonight is just to give us roughly an idea what the range is, so that on our next meeting,
Yes.
when we're setting the rate, we can think about whether the rate gets us
Right.
Annual revenue that we need. Okay, got it. Okay, great, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's all my questions. So let me open it up to public comment. So I don't see any.
Mayor, I think it's fine to do public comment now. I did just want to flag that you would probably want to do it a second time if.
I'm going to.
Oh, you are going to do it.
Yeah, my
twice.
plan is to do public comment on
Go
Tony's
public
part,
comment twice. Okay.
and then we'll do discussion on Tony's part, and then we're going to go back to the ordinance and we'll do questions on the ordinance and public comment and then discussion.
Okay.
And we sort of broke it into two because the
Yeah.
slide.
This is, yes, it's one agenda item. So normally you would just do one public comment, but discretion of the council to do multiple public comments.
Yeah, I think it's just that'll let people comment on parts that they care about. Because otherwise people are going to potentially, the council's going to want to bring up the other deck and then we'll spend minutes doing that. So, okay. So with that, let me open a public comment on Tony's slides. So I don't see any hands in the schoolhouse. Online, I see Rita. Rita, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. I have one simple one. What if this stuff doesn't pass in November? What becomes of us? And there was a recent article in about Brisbane and their housing element and some other things, and we were mentioned in it. How does all of this affect us if this doesn't pass? Thank you.
Okay. Tony, do you want to just provide a quick answer to that? I know you've sort of said it already, but you want to just
Yeah,
remind,
I mean,
because I think it's important for the public to get
Right.
this. So,
So it would be, we're then bound by the policy of maintaining a 20% reserve. So, that would be done on the expense side.
Okay.
And we really can't do anything with the sheriff's contract. We can reduce the use of consultants. We can further reduce wildfire mitigation, but it would come on the backs of staff to balance the budget.
right. So I think like all the long-term needs you just showed us, we do none of
Yeah, we
those.
can't, we
And
can't
we
do it.
wouldn't put any money into our capital fund.
Nope.
And we would cut staff. I think that's,
And we would lose our SB1 funding and we lose,
yeah,
and
Great.
then we would be going back into where we were 4 or 5 years ago.
right. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any other public comment on Tony's? All right, going once, going twice. All right, I don't see any hands. So Tony, thank you very much. That's really helpful, and I think it's going to help inform our discussions at our next meeting. So with that, Darcy, can we go back to your slide deck?
I thought
I'm sorry.
we were going to.
We're just, I'm sorry, I apologize. I get confused by
Yeah.
separating this as well. So now I'll bring it back to the council for discussion on Tony's part, and then we'll go to the next part.
I
My
have
apologies.
one
Thank you.
more, I have one more comment to make.
Oh, yeah, please.
The finance committee will be discussing this on Tuesday as well.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. And thank you, Judith. Okay, go ahead.
All right, if you want me to go first. So the question on leaner or richer, I mean, to do this all properly probably takes 5 to 10 Tonys over 3 years, no offense intended. And so I think for myself, I find those ranges and those parameters very helpful to think about. So I do think they're really helpful context. But I do think that I'm personally not prepared to say, well, that one ought to be 750 or 8. Like, I think the range that you suggested for me, I'm not going to second guess because I don't find that a useful endeavor. And I think it's a little bit outside of what's practical tonight. And that's just speaking for me. The other thing is there are 2 aspects of the question. What if it doesn't pass? One is, severe reductions, right? But we haven't said, a backup plan for additional revenue enhancements going forward. So tell me if I'm wrong, but to me, among other things, and I defer to staff and council on this, you could be looking at a special election and a different approach for revenue enhancement in March at some cost. Tell me if that's wrong, but I do think the public has to understand, while we're trying here our best to do what's right in one shot, it would be more likely some combination of severe cutbacks and trying again with something else.
Right, we'd have to declare a fiscal emergency
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
To be on the March
Mhm.
ballot.
Mhm.
But yeah, there would be some significant costs because, we'll probably be the only one having a special election in March, or fewer towns would have items on the ballot, so there'll be a higher cost for that election.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it would be what other revenue options would we consider?
Yeah, and I'm not saying I advocate for that. I just think people have to understand there's tools out there and, they're not our preferred route, but there are tools out there to consider in real time as we go forward because there's no guarantee. Right. Okay.
And Judy, if I could just add to
Yeah,
that, I
please.
mean, the finance committee also discussed some of this, and there are other options like a lease back where we basically,
Mhm.
The county, takes our buildings and we lease them back from them. I mean, none of them seem like great options, but,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
I think those options though take effect as your reserve gets lower and lower. Obviously we still have a reserve and we can still use it for a while, but at some point we need to keep enough for an absolute emergency and we need to keep the lights on. So you're absolutely right. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some combination, but they all seem pretty drastic. So it's
And,
just,
and for what it's worth, I've been in a lot of the finance committee meetings and we did discuss at a couple years ago at a council meeting whether or not to declare a fiscal emergency. So we as a council have had these concepts floated in the past. We would have to take that out, dust it off again and figure out what, if anything, we want as the game plan. Okay, thank you. That's it.
thank you, Judith. Becca, do you have any comments?
So I would say that the range that you've provided, that staff has provided, is pretty realistic. We really need to face reality here. We've been delaying our maintenance for several years. Costs have been going up everywhere, whether it's insurance, health insurance, the sheriff's contract. We know that's getting to be crazy. Staff costs, we haven't been paying staff enough to keep up with the market. We just know that to have a stable and resilient community, we have to pass some type of revenue measure. So I I feel like the numbers that have been provided, the lists of potential things that we've delayed not doing, that we really need to be doing to secure the town, to make the town safe, so that we don't have a blowout in our storm drain, so that we have better evacuation routes, so that we have better clearance of our brush. These are all critical for the working of the town. And that includes also supporting our staff, having a full staff that can handle all the responsibilities, that we have enough bandwidth to deal with anything that happens, whether it's an emergency, whether it's the new laws that come down every year. So I think the range is realistic. I might, I mean, the finance committee will play around with the numbers as well and try to kind of give us some recommendations, I guess, in terms of where they fall out. But, I would probably put us in the middle of that range, or maybe a little bit on the slightly lower side, and go out with that. And then, depending on how the market is, how the sales go, we'll be able to kind of gauge how well we're doing and how well the money that's coming in through a potential transfer tax covers our needs. And it at least will give us several years of being able to be more stable and solve some of the problems, some of the unmet needs. So that would be where I'm at with this.
Okay, thank you.
Can I go next?
All right,
Thank you.
sure.
So first of all, I just want to, we've had some comments about the question on parcel taxes. So I'm backtracking a little bit because I want this publicly on the record. We did have the conversation on, about whether to move forward with the transfer tax or parcel tax. So I'm just reminding the public that we did vote 5-0 to move forward with the transfer tax. Because, we all decided that made the most sense. Because of lots of ongoing cost of living, and this would increase proportionally over time, continuing. In terms of where we should come in on the amount is kind of what I'm hearing. There's been a statewide conversation because of the Howard Jarvis ballot measure about the amount and whether or not. And what we pulled out at 1% is exactly allowed. We could go higher, we can go less, but 1% is what we pulled out. And that was, we can go up to 1.1 or 1.5 is what just happened to get Howard Jarvis to pull it off the ballot. So, at 1%, what we pulled at is exactly, we're in the complete sweet spot for that. I know like state of Hawaii does 7.5%. It's insane for people who live out, but state of California with Howard Jarvis pressuring, we are in the sweet spot of what we can do. So I just wanted to state that. And then the exemptions, what no one asked about is the comments, and I'm sorry to bring this back up. That's later. Okay. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, just in a general sense, I feel that the value of our community is in its stability, and without financial stability, the value of our properties, the value of our town is greatly diminished, and this is something we have to do, and we've put a lot of thought and care into making sure it was done in a way that was as painless and as effective as possible. And of course, I'm fully supportive. I also think that I believe we polled at 10%, but at any rate,
No, it's $10 per thousand, which is
$10. Okay,
1%.
Thank you. That helps me. We need to actually make sure that we get our reserve back up to what we considered safe for in less risky times. We're now in more risky times, more climate instability. We have more need for reserve, not less. And I think the value of our community is diminished by not moving.
Thank you, Mary. So I just wanted to say thank you. I thought the list was helpful. I think it's worth noting that this isn't a sort of shopping list of all possible things we could spend money on. This is already clearly a pared down list. So the range you're proposing doesn't fund all the needs that you listed, and the things you listed were only some of the examples. So, our long-term needs are probably much greater than this, but I think we as a town have always been fiscally responsible, and been a low tax. So I think we're balancing the serious needs, storm drains, wildfire, evacuation. Those things feel like things that need to get funded, and we need to find a way to fund it. So, but I just wanted to be clear that there are a lot of things we'd like to do that aren't on this list and aren't going to get done. And the other thing I would add is we also have the option as this, once we if we figure out sort of roughly the revenue and roughly the rate based on the ordinance, we'll get to in this next section. We also have the ability to adjust those if we were collecting too much money. So that's the other thing I feel comfortable with, that range. So with that, I'm going to close this section, but thank you. I think this was very helpful, and I look forward to the Finance Committee next Tuesday. Okay, now, now that I've split one agenda item into two parts, can we go back to the first part of the agenda item? Are there any questions for Darcy and Catherine?
Yep.
Okay, start with you, Judith.
Sure. And some of these are reflected in a public comment as well. And I think it's helpful to get people oriented to ask them anyway, since they overlapped in part with mine. And the first area, exemptions. And I don't really have a great sense of them. Obviously, the concern is the exemptions swallow the upside. So I want to make sure I understood. The first one, exemption instrument to secure debt, that would be, we're not taxing a mortgage. Is that essentially it? But somebody, even if someone's buying a house with a mortgage, the purchaser and the seller still have to come up with the money. We're
Correct.
just not going after the banks providing the mortgage.
That is
it?
correct. Or if someone just refinances, they would not be, they would be exempt from paying tax. And this is an existing exemption. Since 1967, the town of Portola Valley has had this exemption. And all of the ones, actually, almost all of them, there are a couple that were amended in 1987, but these have been on the books. And so the proposal is to keep those in place with no changes.
Yeah, and apologies if I'm raising old and cold, but I do want to understand, because there's a proposal for considering other. Sure, while we're looking at it, that I understand. The other one that I had a question about was the continuing partnership. Again, this has to do with the way a property is held, but does this take out of the applicability of the tax anything held in a partnership? Like, it's pretty tough to read. And I want to make sure that we're not creating loopholes where people can hold things in a certain way. It's unlikely, but I just want to ask that question.
Yeah. And this, you're right. This exemption is quite dense. Again, this is based
Yeah.
on state law, and it is also one of those that's been in place for a long time. The idea behind this one is that when partnership interests change hands, the property held by the partnership is not taxed. But when the partnership terminates, the property it owns is taxed, but no more than one time.
Okay. And the public comment had said, maybe there's an exemption for people who incur these, a buy and a sell within a certain period of time. And I'm sure this is old, trodden path, that one of the downsides of creating that type of exemption could be that we're kind of encouraging flipping, and also we don't know if this is even an issue in town. So let me know if there's any background here or a framework to apply as I consider my view on that.
I'll just note, yes, I did notice that comment as well. And, you know, big picture, the council does have discretion to add additional exemptions either now before it goes to the voters, or if passed, the council retains that discretion to add additional exemptions. You know, Darcy and I have looked at a lot of other ordinances, probably a dozen different, you know, ordinances by charter towns and cities. And some of them do add additional exemptions. Again, we're not recommending that at this time, but the council retains that discretion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in keeping simple is good, but also making sure we're like streamlining. But my question is, if we did want to create another exemption, is that a vote, or is that an ordinance that the council has the right to change?
So the council would have the right to change that. So if
Okay.
it goes to the vote, let's say you added that exemption in this, you know, in this, and decided to change your mind later, the
Yeah.
council could make that change.
Okay.
Right,
Okay,
and
that's
can
helpful.
I add on?
Yeah,
Or
please.
so I understand we could add an exemption to basically protect people if they sold within a certain period or something. But presumably you can't make an exemption that would actually increase the tax. Is that correct? Without a vote? I mean, just
I see
thinking
what you're saying,
logically that
yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
somewhere in this legal framework, something that would prevent us from, like, if we deleted all of these exemptions, then that would have an
You could-
increased tax consequence, and presumably we couldn't do that. Is that correct?
That would require some legal research, I would say.
I'm
I
not
think-
thinking we would
yeah.
do that. I think I would be happy with this,
Yeah.
but I was just trying to understand.
Yeah.
That I'm guessing that we are talking about decreasing tax burden, not increasing. tax burden.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Judith. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's a good flip side of what I was trying to get at. And the costs of operating as a city, like, this isn't quite this, it's a different, but I think, Darcy, in your presentation, you kind of were covering, if I understood correctly, that the costs of operating under this framework, there's no anticipated significant addition once we get through something operationally.
That's
it's-
correct.
Okay, thank you. Let me just flip through. No, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Becca, you want to go next?
I guess I asked this privately to the town manager, but in terms of ballot language, we would just in the actual ballot language. So we're not going to, or where would this Exhibit A actually show up somewhere in the booklet, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, that will be decided at the next meeting. But the council would have discretion to print the entire text of the ordinance in the ballot pamphlet. And I will just double check. There may be an additional cost for that. So we'll actually might want to run down the costs for printing the entire ordinance for next time. Yeah.
I don't have other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, any other questions?
Well, I suppose maybe we've done this, but I suppose I'd like to ask what the council thinks about Bill Urban's suggestions for exemptions, and whether you can say anything about that or not.
So whether the council will discuss it when we get to council discussion. Did you mean to ask what the council thinks?
The
Oh.
staff?
Or
The
ask the
staff.
staff?
I was asking staff.
Okay.
Is that wrong?
No, but you said you're asked what council thought.
No.
You meant what
I-
staff. Got it. Oh, our attorney.
We have an
Attorney.
attorney who's
Yeah.
is the council, sorry.
Yeah, it's a confusing use of the word.
Yeah.
No problem. I understand.
So I would want to research that a little bit more in terms of the whether that would have any impact. I guess I'd work with Tony actually see what kind of impact it might have on revenue projections, adding that additional exemption. And I'd want to look at, I guess, other samples. Like I mentioned, we've looked at probably a dozen other RPTT ordinances, and I haven't seen this one. So I would just want to, make sure it could be implemented. Yeah, and we're feasible. I don't have a policy leaning one way or the other about whether it's a good or a bad idea, but those are my thoughts. There was also a comment that was in that same, forgive me if you're not asking about this, but
I was
about
not.
the operative
Or-
versus effective date.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that one.
Should I go ahead and
10 days
answer?
versus 30 days?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that one too. So staff's, recommendation has for quite a while been to, if passed, get this on the books and going as soon as possible for two reasons. One is the town needs the money. The other reason is that the Howard Jarvis measure was going to be on the same ballot. And it was basically a race to see which one would go into effect first, because there was a grandfathering provision in the Howard Jarvis measure. Now that that is no longer the case, there's still the first reason is, I think from staff's, and I really, Darcy and Tony speak to this more readily. The sooner the better in terms of revenue generation is generally staff's perspective. But I will say, in looking at the dozen or so ordinances, there are some that actually do choose a date certain, even potentially a few months later to have, like July 1, to have the tax go into effect. So that would be a council decision.
And if I could follow up, because my question was, given that the election is early November and it gets certified a month later, and then we enact it 10 days after that, there actually is 30 days plus 10 days from the time it goes on the ballot. So I appreciated the public comment we don't want somebody to have entered into a transaction and then gone, oh, I had no idea this was going to happen. But at this point, it's going to be over 30 days where they know it's on the ballot. They may not know the results because we won't know the result. But I would say from a transaction, if I were in one of those transactions, I would be assuming that I needed to think about that. So is that a reasonable way to think about that part of the sort of public comment? Which it was sort of a fairness, the way I read it was.
Yeah, I would say so. If the council puts this on the ballot in 2 weeks, then there would be, notice that this is a possibility. And then, as you say, basically the election results you can, are ascertainable within about a week of the election.
Right. Even though it's not official.
Even though it's not official.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Mary, thank you. I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. It's a lot to take in and I appreciate the discussion. No question.
Okay. Helen?
I do have some questions. So, does staff have an opinion on the 3 years versus the 5 years exemption idea?
So I'll just say, I don't recommend we add any exemptions. Our mission, this whole process has been keep it simple, keep it streamlined. We've presented you with our recommendation, and the other factor is that we've been working on modeling, the fiscal impact. And the minute you start adding in exemptions, you're muddling with that. My advice is just what we said earlier, which is that we recommend exemptions that are in our current ordinance. Don't make any changes. We can certainly entertain any changes in the future. But I think we're just getting a little ahead of ourselves right now.
Okay.
Just caution you not to.
Right. And in
go
terms
into
of
that.
the partnership exemption, obviously under IRS, it looks like, but my understanding is like Disney has used it to avoid, right?
Well, and again, that's another thing we could look at if we need to. I would also emphasize that, this tax is in effect in over 500 counties and cities right now, and their ordinances largely mirror what we have right now. The minute we start getting unique, you start confusing realtors who work across the entire state, and I just wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, if we do have issues, and it's important to note that we can amend this ordinance quickly if we need to. You need introduction, adoption, but that could be done in a month if we need to.
Okay. What about Proposition 19 and the transfers from?
Yeah, again, so as I said earlier, Proposition 13 tax implications, those are completely separate from this. So that has,
I said Proposition 19, not 13.
well, but 13 and 19 are very similar where they relate to your property taxes. And this is completely separate than that.
But, so for instance, under a qualified real estate transfer, when people will transfer property to significant others, for instance, what I'm confused about is like, how does the transfer tax work on those situations?
Well, there's still a transfer of title, right? And it's the same. Yeah.
Got it.
And sorry, I mean to confuse Prop 13, all that, but this is very different than property taxes,
And Prop 19 deals with the assessed value,
the assessed value.
that they can transfer assessed value from property.
Right, and except
The transfer
for,
tax is still good.
there are exemptions within Prop 19 for like if a child's living on the property, et cetera. So that's where I'm
Still related to the assessed value of basically whatever the assessed value was when the property transferred. They can transfer it to the new property.
Got it. Okay. And then that would still trigger a property,
Well, the transfer tax
Yeah.
would still be assessed at value,
got it. Okay.
Of the
the transfer.
remember, it's a property or it's a real property transfer tax. So if there's a transfer and there's a real property and there's a sale, a dollar amount, then there's a tax.
Got it. Okay. And even if there's not a sale, but there's a transfer. Right.
But again, yeah, unless there's an exemption, yeah, but you could transfer it for $5 to your son.
Right. Got it. Okay. Just curious how that would work. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I think my colleagues have asked the questions I was going to ask. So let me open it up to public comment. So let's start with Dave Cardinal. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I think this is a total no-brainer, honestly, and I just want to put my support in. I don't think like messing with the UUT is, I don't know, like tiddlywinks or something. That's not a reliable source of revenue because we don't even know what our utilities look like in the age of the internet. And I don't see any other way we can do anything. So I just want to lend my full support to the idea of an RPTT and the charter city. And I would support whatever rate we need and can afford or can get passed. So thanks. That's my thought.
Thank you, Dave. Betsy? Welcome, Betsy.
Yeah, sorry, I was waiting to be unmuted. Thank you.
Got it.
I too, I mean, the town absolutely needs to raise money in order to survive. And so I'm in favor generally. I have a specific point and question about the council amendments. That would be 3.12.130 regarding B, which I prefer to A. And I prefer it because the council would seemingly be more likely to reduce a tax rate that was collecting more money than needed, were they less cautious around creating a future potential insufficiency were they to take that action. So I'm in favor of incenting a council to reduce rates whenever possible. As I read A, then I guess my question is, isn't that redundant? Isn't it one over the other? And the other question regards C, which I straight out didn't track. I couldn't follow what it was trying to get at. So perhaps that's because I'm late in the night, or perhaps it could be stated more clearly, or you could explain it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betsy. Catherine, do you want to quickly respond to those? I mean,
Yes.
those seem pretty straightforward.
I'd be happy to. So this refers to the section of the ordinance that expressly allows for council amendments so long as the amendments do not increase tax rates. And there was a question about subsection B well, subsection A, I will just say, allows the council to repeal or reduce the tax. So section B says that the council may reduce tax rate and later restore the tax rate to a rate that does not exceed the tax rate approved by the voters. And there is a question about, well, isn't that redundant with A? And I certainly see that point, and maybe there would be a way to make this a little bit tighter. But the idea is that the council could increase the tax rate if it is simply to restore it. So if the council takes an action to reduce it in year 1, and then in year 5, decides, oh, wait, we've actually need the money now, and so we need to increase the tax rate. It's basically, this is just saying that the council can increase the tax rate after a previous reduction of the tax rate.
Right, but A, the way I read A is just not quite the same in the sense the council could decide, because, the public has asked for it, that it be permanently and irrevocably reduced.
Completely repealed.
Well, repealed or reduced, but we could reduce it
Yes.
and reduce it in a way that it could not be raised back up. Is that possible? Or is it just we can either revoke it or we have this sort of up and down?
So given the right to repeal it, I believe the council could actually just repeal the tax. Yeah.
Altogether.
Altogether. And then
Could-
it would not be able to restore it at a later date.
Right.
If
but
it was
could we
repealed.
reduce it? I mean, let's just say we pick the $10 per thousand. Could we reduce it to 5 and say, we're going to 5 permanently, and the only way to raise it back up would be to have another election? Like if that's what we were being
No, you
asked.
could, yeah, I see what you're saying, but no, you couldn't do that.
So it's either repeal or we can reduce with the
Yeah.
potential.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So otherwise you'd be tying the hands of a future council for what this council to say future council. That so.
Fair enough.
And then there was a question about subsection C, which would allow for clarifications. And that's really just to give the council some leeway and flexibility to clarify language that may not be crystal clear. With overarching restriction, though, is that the council cannot increase the tax rate.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any other public comments? Wait just a minute. All right, so I don't see any hands online, so I will bring it back to the council for discussion. Who would like to start? Judith?
Yeah,
This is
sure.
your night to start first.
I
Thank you.
know. Going first. I like the idea of keeping this simple, being in the range of what other jurisdictions are, as long as they're reasonably applicable to us. And I don't view it, what I've read here is something that requires tailoring to us. I think it's important for us to have flexibility. So the council amendment section, to me, you have to read them in the alternative or being applied sequentially or whatever, other than the repeal. So I find, and I read these for a living, so, I found it pretty clear. So I'm not sure I would find the need to clarify it unless somebody were looking at, like, could say, in this particular instance, something bad could happen. Like, I think these are all tools we might want. And my interpretation of C is that, if there's a certain type of ownership structure that isn't clearly within the ordinance as it exists today, we could go, oh yeah, something new happened. So let's extend these principles, and here's how that would be treated. Like, it's kind of like we don't know what it's about, but as long as it's not increasing the tax, we could do that without a new vote with the public, which is a big hurdle and a big expense for us. So to me, all that makes sense, and I like the targeted edits that you've made. So for me, this has been very helpful to have the preview of it this week, so that we can all go away, think about any other questions for the next time around. But thank you for preparing this and providing the examples and going and doing the research on the 12 jurisdictions. So that's it.
Thank you. You'd like to go next? Mary, you ready?
I'd say, I have to say, as real estate documents go, this is very clear and it's very understandable and simple. And I'm fully in support.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca?
I agree that keeping it simple right now makes the most sense. I like the amendment where you're able to reduce the tax if we find that somehow were huge numbers of sales of very expensive homes happened and we're raising much more than we kind of need to operate safely, though probably initially we'll need to put some of that money into reserves and into the storm drains. But it gives us a lot of flexibility for future. And I also appreciate the addition of being able to kind of tailor the ordinance, whether it's for exemptions or whether it's for the implementation, if we do discover that, there's some sort of issue with how it's working out, sort of unintended consequences that we haven't predicted. So I think it's well done, and I appreciate all the effort that's gone into crafting it. Thanks.
Thank you. Ellen?
Yeah, just echoing what my colleagues have said. I appreciate this. I think it's a strong, flexible document that gives on-ramps and off-ramps later, which I appreciate. So I support this draft. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would echo the same thing. Keeping it simple, I think that was the direction we gave you, and I think you've done an excellent job of following our direction. I like it because I think if there are unintended consequences, we have the ability to either adjust the tax or we could also adjust UUT. I mean, there are multiple ways that we can adjust this if the town ends up raising more money than we need, which at the moment is sort of hard to imagine, but I can believe it. I mean, we could get there, and I appreciate that people are sensitive to that, and I'm sensitive to it as well. So I like the fact that we've got some knobs that we can turn to adjust that so we're not over collecting, because that's definitely something that's important to me, that we don't end up creating a mechanism that just collects taxes that we don't know what to do with. Like that's not good public policy. So I think that's great. I would also say the same thing about the exemptions. I like that it's simple. I would not make any additional exemptions, and I think we can operate. And after 6 months or a year, if we find that, wait a minute, I mean, this really does seem onerous, then we can bring it back to the council, and pretty quickly we can add the exemptions as appropriate. But I think I'd rather see those exemptions as something that's needed rather than try to second guess and add more complexity to the document. So I very much appreciate that. And I think this is definitely the right direction for us to be going. So thank you. Thank you for all the work, both in the finance department, and legal department, in the administration. This has been great. All right, so with that, I'm going to close this agenda item and try to find my agenda. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 8, which is subcommittee liaison and regional agency reports. There's one ASCC liaison in the packet. Thank you, Mary. Are there any other oral reports?
I just wanted to say that I have signed up for the League of California Cities annual conference in September.
Okay.
And they actually have, they have their general assembly so that you can actually present a motion that you would like to have covered. So if there's anything that the town council would like to have presented, we do have to get, I think, several other municipalities to join in with us. But if there's some pressing need that you feel that the League of California Cities should be addressing, then please think about it. I think the deadline is coming up in the next month, maybe.
Okay.
So just give it some thought if there's some burning issue that we need to do to encourage Sacramento to kind of be a little more reasonable, if you will. Anyway.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other oral reports? Helen?
So I have I wanted to talk about e-bikes for a second. Obviously, I poked a bear this week, kind of on purpose, but to try to let people know what's going on with the e-bike situation. I did want to do one correction because I'd been telling people that we will have some laws probably in January, but the education and the manufacturing situation, those will not go into effect if they pass, which I'm assuming they will pass, until 28 and 29. So letting you know the manufacturing, you need to let manufacturers put, figure out how to put headlamps on and to put on speedometers and the other things that are in the bill, so that they're and the second one for the education to create curriculum and get that into schools, kind of idea. That's going to take some time. So I wanted to correct that for the record. The other so that's e-bikes. I still think, we are still all going to need to work on e-bikes with the parents. So I don't see this changing, to be honest. But the other one I wanted to report about is, I'm not sure that you guys, and I'm on the liaison to the utility committee. So this is a utility committee that hasn't been meeting for, I want everyone to know that AT&T went to the FCC because the CPUC had said that they could not end their landlines. But the FCC 3 days ago came out and said that AT&T can end landlines. So that will, so there's still a lawsuit and other things, but I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that. And then lastly, I had a question about the ASCC 501 Wayside motion for continuance. This 501 Wayside continuance, isn't it under the Housing Accountability Act, and they only get 5 bites of the apple? Just curious.
I'm not actually super familiar with this application, so I would.
Under the Housing Accountability Act, you usually only get 5 bites of the apple of a public meeting. Right?
Yeah, I probably don't want to get too into it, but I'm not sure if this is agendized, but there is, and this came up with the Stanford project actually, under SB 330, there is a 5 hearing rule. And so, that is something to be mindful of in terms of housing development projects. This doesn't apply to other types of approvals, but for housing development projects specifically, there is a 5 hearing rule.
Right. Well, I was going to say, can you guys work with our attorney on this? Because this isn't agendized, but why don't you have this conversation with our attorney?
Well,
Yeah. So the two of you can meet with the attorney.
Well, it is on. Okay, well, this was on the liaison memo, and I wanted to check in about the 5 bites of the apple. Okay, so those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I'd like to open it up for public comment. Rita, your hand's up.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I just wanted to comment on the e-bikes. Maybe this isn't the right time, but I really hope that our town, along with the parents and the school system, can really do some education, because everyone wants to talk about the kids, but these kids are not purchasing these bikes themselves, and they're not paying for the electric bill. So I really hope that with our committees or with the council, that we can do something. So thanks for bringing it up, Helen.
Thank you, Rita. Is there any other public comment on the reports? All right. Seeing none, I will bring it back. Is there any further discussion in the council? Okay, so with that, we move to number 9. I would accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And a second?
Gosh.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, excellent. Thank you, everyone.